There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm newtmechanist, and tonight we are going to be working on our game project. Ideally, we're going to get some new power-ups put in. Hey there, Tass. We got a bit sidetracked last time with fixing some of the rotational logic, but we still got a new message concept in there that makes things a little more focused, or gives us some options. Checking in with the kitty cats, you can see Molly in there. She was playing with the cat iPad. It's an older iPad, but it has a program running on it right now that has a little brown mouse that walks across the screen, makes a scratching noise while it's walking, and it chirps. If it gets tapped hard enough, it will kind of flatten a little bit and squeak. So it has inflicted full zoomies, and it started next to that little box, and it has been steadily batted around. Every now and then, Sky completely flips out and practically throws the iPad around trying to get it. I lost the iPad for a bit, and having recovered it, it has proven to be a bit of a success. But yeah, game. I have discovered a bug, and we're going to have to get to the bottom of it, and then we will proceed. So we got bounce last time as a result of some of the changes. We'll see what we make this time. Okay, let's see if I can show you the recreation of that issue. And let's see if the traditional thing happens in that you get the inability to recreate it as soon as you want to recreate it. So we have spread here. Now we're going to put in orbit, and it freezes. So now we're going to go over here, and we are going to pause. That'd do it. Let me just revert this code here. One of the things I want to set aside is trying to get rotation to bounce how I would really want it. We need it to influence the degrees of rotation per second and the speed of movement on the rotational path to make it bounce the way we would want. Right now, it effectively distorts the rotation. A orbit inward will orbit inward faster. It will tighten the spiral in every time a bounce happens, and that's not really what it should do. But it definitely should infinite loop here. Let's just end that. Let's just revert that. Bounce is okay. Yeah. Bounce, we should leave it. Discard the changes there. We're leaving these in. These are debugging, and I just don't have the motivation to go find the code that makes them right now. Eventually, we will need to, if for no other reason than as we're changing these. but it's not actively harmful that they're being produced. This is the map when we load it. Again, you can't see, but that's actually various, what would it be? Based on color wording. Those are various shades of red. Very, very dark shades of red. And this is the composite texture that the shader uses to render the map. Oh. Well, at least we fixed the bug quickly, hypothetically. Throw a whole bunch of rotation impacting things in here. Yeah, there we go. Yum. Now, it's hard to see with heavy rotation like this, but when the bounce happens, the thing that respects it, that ultimately respects it, is the random direction motion. But if we take out wave motion and spiral out, when these bounce, I think it's still left in, but they will, it will impact the rotation. You'll see some of them start tightening up their rotation. Yeah, bounce gives us, I think, a lot to work with here. At the very least, I kind of consider this a way that the yarn ball would ultimately work. There's more motion that I would like to put in. I'd kind of like a bouncing along the floor motion as well. Like, it kind of arcs up and arcs down as it goes. It's not going to be 2.5D motion just yet. I am considering it, but it's hard to properly convey that in a 2D environment. Like, this isn't an isometric environment. There isn't actually height at play. Well, that wouldn't be isometric, but this isn't a 2.5D world. There is no simulated z-axis. It's all xy. So things cannot be above other things. Spatially, they can be, beside other things. So if it were to have an up and down motion, it would be like the axe that you see in Vampire Survivors. It arcs up as if the axe is thrown in an upward arc, referencing the Castlevania axe. But that just means that it has an upward arc and then plummets downward, making it harder to hit things up that are above on the screen. But if we make that a small enough bounce, then it would just be kind of thematic. It would effectively be the rotation, but favoring a particular pattern. It would be trickiest when the yarn ball is moving up. It's again, kind of visual trickery that you would be doing. But yeah, we have bouncing. Let's see. One of the ones that we want to get to is changing it so that we can get, like, on impact to do this. So one thing would be special gates that open as soon as an impact happens. So let's do something like that. I have considered alternatives to our current gate. There would still be that sort of logic, but instead of the pattern that we have right now where gates are considered, like, we handle them in blocks, instead all open gates are processed, and gates open and close based on events. So there would be a gate opened event that if our gate is opening, it's going to ignore. It says, okay, I'm opening, send the event. And any gate that is already open that doesn't want to be parallel opened, that it doesn't want to be open at the same time, would close. So that would be kind of a message sending flow trickery that we'd be dealing with. Because we could have a series of gates in order that would open and close based on that. Like the first one would open and say, I am opening because this event happened. Then a subsequent one could say, I am opening. The prior one would then close. The next one could say, I am opening. The prior one would close. But we could also have gates that don't care about other gates. So the on impact, I am open. And then when time passes, it says, I am open. Well, time has passed. I shall now close. And that open could pass information into new logic. The reason that I'm thinking that might be a way to approach it actually, no, it doesn't need to be. We could still do them in sequence, where we ask a gate, are you open? And some gates don't respond to, are you open? It is only going to respond to other events like collision. Timer-based gates respond to time passed. Or, here, let's... I'm saying it in a convoluted fashion, so let's go into the actual logic here to show. Behaviors, process the behaviors. Here we go. Okay, so this is where we're building them. It's if we have a gate, we're going to add the gate to our collection, essentially. We'll copy it, we'll add it to the gates group. And whenever that happens, we create a new behavior that follows it. Those behaviors are going to be in groups. And it's a separate list. When we are running through with the entity, so we pass them into each of them. The first thing we do is say, hey, base behavior, handle the message. True or false? If it handles the message, that message is eaten and it does not proceed. We don't do the same thing here, and we kind of should. The handle message, we should say, is it handled? If it's handled, we would then continue. Oh, okay. No, this is, we don't care whether it's handled or not. We just call that one. We are not iterating over the whole group. And this is part that would have to change. It's if gates past the current one can open, then it's different. Because we need to ask if a prior group of behaviors consumed the message. If they did, you don't proceed to the next group. But instead of saying, okay, check if we should open the next gate, and if we should, remove the current behavior and set. So the dequeuing here is that we remove a gate from the collection and a behaviors from the collection so that we can see what is the current blocking gate and what is the current set of behaviors to execute. We would just have a series of entities in a row, and we'd ask them, is this gate open? So we'd say, hey, behavior group, is your gate open? If that behavior group does not have a gate or its gate is open, we pass the message to it. If the behavior group has a gate but it's closed, we don't. And we just keep going down that behavior list, that behavior group list, and say, do you have a gate and is it open? In fact, we could we could add to the entity behavior that is to say, if there is a gate, ask it if its gate is open. Such that if I ask, is it gated? It would return true if there was a gate and the gate was closed. Otherwise, it would return false. So it's false if the gate is open or if there isn't a gate. Then that allows us to have things like the projectile continues to exist for the duration, for that whole duration. Or every gate can exist simultaneously. That does lead to questions about how we would properly handle timer gates. Because timer gates currently are handled in sequence. That is, if there are 2 timer gates in a row, the second one can't open until the first one has already opened. We could impact that with layered logic. That is, if there is a subsequent timer gate, we make that information available, but that creates a encapsulation issue. That means that the thing that's aggregating the behaviors has some knowledge of what they do, like the inner workings of a behavior or gate, or that the gates have knowledge of their siblings, like they have to be able to go up, over, and down in the collection. Say, hey, does this one contain a gate that is a timer? If it is, I have to tell it to wait longer so that it happens after my gate. Layers upon layers of convolution going on there. And I think we should be able to avoid it, but it's figuring out how with timers. Now, we could say a timer gate opens when its time has passed, period. We could have it where there are gates that open only when subsequent gates have not opened. And that's that sequence I was talking about. If the first one has opened, then that one can only open or start opening when a subsequent one hasn't. But that still leads to the problem. Almost leads to a gate check message. Is this gate open as a message instead of an explicit request. And if a gate says I am fully closed, it can eat the message. So subsequent ones don't get asked. That still allows gates to open later in the chain based on other messages. But if it is are you open based on the time slice, like time has passed, then we can block that off. Hello, Sky. Yeah, the iPad has been thrown all the way to the food area, which is well down and right of the play area camera. Where are they all hiding? Audio here. Yeah, okay. A couple of them looking out the window. We had, I think, Sammy, Ember, and one of the two brothers. Zoom and enhance. Ember, and I think that's Mason below. And for those of you that didn't see the Discord announcement or the implications, feeling a little off today. I don't know if it has fully passed, but if it has not passed, then that might result in a shortened stream. But otherwise, we're currently facing a great deal of stream of consciousness happening here. What should we do? I think for now, what we can do is leave the gates as they are. For testing purposes, we will move the impact gate to a different point, you know? We can push it forward to verify that it happens. Entity, behavior, collision events, gates. So we have a timer gate. We are going to create a collision gate. Oh, I started typing, Ember. I get it. Ember has like one toe claw that's super sharp at a time. I don't know what the exact stipulation for which one it is, but if she's being all cuddly, that claw is always placed directly on the collarbone. And you get that lovely little flex, puncture, and scrape going on over and over. It's a sign of affection. Hey there, Lunar. I am not familiar. What would be LOZ? I am perhaps blanking on the acronym. Ah, okay. I don't know that we would do a Legend of Zelda boss cameo, but a wink and a nod with things like a green shirt or the fanfare with "You Got," especially with the these are your random these are the options that you got, or this is a single one that you got. Well, cameo generally implies the presence of a character, like, Zelda appears in some way. We're looking at more of like a nod to it, or a kind of an Easter egg territory, since that's usually that's where you get a lot of references, but, you know, a reference. A generalized. All right, let's close all the other tabs. Let's get our timer gate here. Gate, make sure that we've got all of the stuff. All right, we need our catalog copy. You could straight up just have a character that had a green shirt and wielded a sword and have that. I'm sorry. It could be a, depending on what era we're talking about. You could do like a green, a silver, and a red shirt, and have things like brown, white, and bluish swords kind of stuff. For your pre Breath of the Wild and similar links. If is Vision Gate. You don't copy the open state, but I can't think of any. We'll just neutralize that for now, because I don't know if I'm going to put any sort of member variables in here. If I do, I need to replicate them here. But we need that. Well, we need to determine that. So gates as they stand don't have I open with a behavior message. Let's look at our entity's behavior pattern again. Building it. Laying it out. Yep. Build them, we use them. To build behaviors. Okay, that kicks off the processing. Are we doing our try open? My spawner item. That's where we do the we create them and we build them explicitly. Refreshing my memory on all of this stuff. Then we rotate, we handle a message. So we got a message. We are now going to run through everything and say, do you care about these messages? And this is where we do, if there is a collision, we're going to do a try open on each one. So if we send a collision message, the collision message in here, the collision gate can handle that message. So if it is a collision message, we're going to say the gate opened if this happened. Then we will think further after a very quick break. Very quick. Settling back in, restarting in just a moment. No. I took the opportunity to readjust the iPad position here. We are still getting the periodic bouncy kitten charge out of Molly. Sadly, the settings that I have to use to prevent them from disabling the iPad with their paw swipes there also make it harder for them to splat the mouse, as it were. They still occasionally manage to, but they've got to like do a firm press for about a tenth of a second, and they tend not to. Anywho, though. All right. So if it's a collision, this gate will open. Then we need to define a behavior that just carries this gate in the same way. Do elsewhere. I remember where I put this. Why did you forget that I... Oh, that's a CS that I'm clicking. Data. Oh, we have a wait 3. Wait 3. Go to gate. This is an actual gate that... These are all actual gates that we would use. Gate is what it is called, yes. Okay, now we need to make an item for that. Data items. Items test gate, we can just override this. What did we call that? Behaviors, special Special collision gate. Okay, this should make the existing collision gates in the the existing gates in the inventory into collision gates. Okay, why gate is a gate. It has a 2 copy, which does nothing, but it needs a base one. That's why. This should also call base 2 copy. It needs a it needs a default constructor. For the JSON logic to latch onto. Do. Okay, so we're going to put a collision gate on here. It default bounces. So what we're going to do is it's going to, as soon as it bounces, or as soon as it impacts and bounces, we should see a split into 3. Yep. So as soon as we get a collision message, that gate opens. If it is the current gate. So we're going to do that again. And we'll make it much more apparent. So if they impact, they zigzag. If they impact again, they start to spiral. So this is more like what we would expect to see in actual items. And that's that if it is a multiplier, it requires some sort of quote-unquote expensive condition to trigger. Comparatively expensive. If it's just moving or similar, then there isn't any predicate to it. But, must hit a target or time must pass before this activates is what we should expect to see for anything that amplifies the number of projectiles. Because, again, that is one of the most powerful things you can do in this kind of game, is give increased coverage to a weapon. You can see some of them spread into wild patterns, and that's that currently the way that spread works, it will cause overlaps if you have consecutive spreads. To change that, we would need to alter the offset by a couple of degrees each time so that you didn't get a perfect overlap. But figuring out how to do that properly is a little tricky. If you watch, some of the yarn balls look like they have a heavier outline because they're slightly off center from one they're right on top of. Let's use the other wave pattern. Yeah, let's use a random direction in there. So that it will make their behavior a little weirder on impact. See how there's one on the left that almost looks like it stopped. Because the random direction that it got is at odds with the first random direction that it has. Now that second random direction ceases to be as soon as a second collision happens. But yeah, isn't that neat? Okay, collision gate. And we have spawning logic in here. One of the things I've been wondering about is, could we have a bullet that spawns another bullet? That is, having a way to take a item as a weapon and say it doesn't fire until you put it in the leftmost slot, but you can put a bullet in a subsequent slot, and it acts as a, when this fires, create one of these. But how would we pair that? Now, it could be that every time you get a subsequent weapon, you get a fire next weapon modifier. Is I don't want to. What I'm getting at is I don't want to create useless power-ups. And fire next weapon becomes useless if you don't have a subsequent weapon. Like, if I have a second weapon below Yarn Ball, and I had a item that says, okay, at this point, fire the next weapon, that's not useful by itself unless there is a next weapon. It does nothing. Which, I mean, could be okay. And we could have special logic that says, does the player have more than one weapon right now? If they do, this power-up is valid in the selection list. Otherwise, don't offer it. That way you never get that marker. I think we would ultimately need to do it that way. Because we don't want you to have just the arbitrary choice of dropping the weapon into the list. Sometimes it would not make sense because you are... Like, when does that other weapon come into existence? Is it, like, if it's in that list, is it simultaneously? What does that weapon carry with it? Is it everything that follows? Like how we do. But if we make it so that it is a spawn next weapon gate, then we could have it where everything after that, everything in that behavior group, could be subsequently passed to the new projectile. And that gate's behavior group doesn't get consumed by the first one. But for now, we could just have it where that gate or that item says, okay, I need to have a collision, and as soon as this gate happens, then we will spawn the other one. So let's start with just having it be a yarn ball, because I don't have logic for the other weapon to be created yet. Okay, and for that, I think we already have the gate for it. And we could have spawn... I feel like we should make the other item. Making the other item, I think, would be more viable here. Okay, to get the wind-up mouse in place, we need a special targeter that is get me a random enemy entity. Which means we need to be able to get one out of the entity manager. To get one out of the entity manager, we need to be able to differentiate what one of those entities is. Like, which one is it? Because right now, we just have entities, like what IDs we've got, and we don't want it to be trying too hard to get one. Like, I just want to be able to quickly say, give me an enemy. We could have multiple entity dictionaries that are based on a type, similar to what we're doing in some of these other locations. Let's look at our catalog. Right here, where we are adding to the catalog, we say, okay, it is a type of thing. Any new thing, we have to add a type for it. Or, I'm sorry, we have to add a dictionary for it. So, to do that, though, we wouldn't be using the class. We would be using the entity's type. We'd be using its category. I don't want to necessarily need prior knowledge of this, so we would have some layers to it. And we would need to change the catalog, the entity manager behavior to iterate on each of them. You know, instead of just for each entity in this, it would be for each entity in each of these, do the thing. Because then we could just say, give me a random one of the things inside this dictionary. So right here, it wouldn't be entities add. It would be entities by type add. Like there'd be a add by type, and we would need to have logic that says, okay, if there is a dictionary of that type, do that. And then it's, instead of just one for each, it's a nested for each, where the first one is to get the dictionary that we're working on, and the second one is to get the key value pairs for entities out of the interior one. But otherwise, they are handled the same way, which is to send a time pass to it and then call physics update on it. During physics update is when we generate, after we move the things, and then we call the collision managers where we're generating the other messages. We are, for the most part, we'd also need to do it here. Okay. All right, let's do a interim commit here. This is where we are modifying this one for testing. So let's set that aside for now. Let's do clean commits. The gate doesn't really benefit from calling the base, but it's a pattern I need to make sure of, because if the parent actually has some initialization that happens inside of its constructors, we don't want to accidentally not have it happen by not calling the base constructor. We only don't call the base if we explicitly don't want any prior logic to happen, which can be true based on the logic we're using, like the class structure that we're using. But I am actually using a full kind of iterative parent-child thing. Push to origin. Source control. Oh, we got two of them. Ember's up there, and Sammy is up there. Okay. What is... It's a uint. Int entity. I know how to stop. I know generally how to spell entities, but clearly I don't know how to stop. Okay, we initialize this. Now, entities as a dictionary ceases to be. So if we add an entity, we are queuing it to add. So right here, it's not entities to remove that we're dealing with. Can't be remove entity. It has to be remove entity by type. We are still just going to pass in the entity. With a name like this, you would expect the type to be passed in, but the entity carries the type. So we don't need to specify it. We don't want to risk a mismatch. Contains key entity dot category consistent terminology. Not a type, it's a category. If it does not contain the type, then it's not going to be able to actually remove it. Dictionary uint entity. Okay. If there is a category for it, we're going to pull that dictionary and we're going to remove that entity. So it's very similar, but if it doesn't contain that key, then we are going to needs a key that's entity.category and then a new dictionary of that type. So then it is a dictionary of this type. Now we are going to pull it back out of the collection because this might not fire. So we're going to get it here. And then we do entities.add. Okay, yeah. Okay, and then we add it by category. There. Redundant. Should still function. Let's verify I haven't done much else. Used to be a read only. Okay. That was an internal. So we are going to do another each entity value pair entity. And entities by category. Count plus equals entities dot count. Turn count. Oh, abstract int entity count, which means we already have an entity count. Gonna fix that. Fix that. Just use that there. we continue fixing. Int dictionary entity is by category. This entity is equal to entities nope for each this one is category pair entity no key value pair is going to be int entity pair in entities entity is equal to pair.value. Then we handle time passed in delta. Okay. For end step, we're going to do very similar. Just so. And instead of that, we are going to do handle message and step message. That. Onward, onward. If oh no. We need to iterate. Okay. Entities to category.count and entity. No. So we haven't found it yet. Entity entities is equal to entities category element I. Dot value. So there's got to be one at the indices here, but we're not using the brackets notation because that will try to get that will try to get the key. Get it by key and not by index. We need the nested for each here. Wait a minute. Is this ever going to happen? This will never happen. This never happens. This doesn't do anything. Let's replicate it, though. We need to replicate it. Sure we don't lose it. It is more expensive, but it should only be marginally so. Instead of dictionary, I mean, the dictionary should be using a hash in the background. Okay. I am curious. All right, we are now removing this tree. Which means we're going to go into remove entity. Now, remove entity does not remove them in line because there could be other processing going on related to that. It's going to put them in entity to remove. So we're going to go up to here. Never got called. This is all irrelevant code. I think this predates our removal, like our resetting of the game. Because we rebuild everything at the end. Nothing should matter. Nothing should linger. It does create some other use cases, but now we are going to We are not going to ever just get a random entity. We're never going to say of all of the entities, because that could be a player, a bullet, a monster, doesn't like an item on the floor. We don't ever want that, but we could say rubric. We go to entity manager, entity count, all of that stuff. We are going to do protected. Virtual entity. Category. No. You don't implement it, it spits out an error. I could just make it abstract in that way. Yeah, should be abstract. Go into our base entity manager. Protected, that should be public. Category contains key. Have it. Dictionary of int to entity. Entities is equal to entities by category, which will be category int do I have a random number generator hiding somewhere? Thought I had a random generator somewhere. I want to use like a universal random generator. Like there is one random seed entity somewhere. Do I have one that's in the game? If I do, I want to move it to a static opening one. Okay. We're calling the Godot randomize. Should be when we are creating enemies, which means it is a spawn point. Say around player. Okay, right here we're saying random is new random. Instead of that random, we want to say Random F. Okay, that's the 0 to 1, which was the same thing we were doing here. So we don't need that random here. This makes this random call use the same seed that we're generating at the beginning of a game call. We could also do this at the beginning of the program, so that we don't have, like, as soon as the game runs, the random seed is determined. We could use that to force a seed, which would be useful for testing purposes. It could also be useful if we ever have some sort of, like, speed run or something that people come up with. Is you can force the seed, which means you can force a, like, this is how it will randomly distribute. To make that really viable, it would have to be like a tool-assisted kind of thing, because there is a lot of randomization that would be happening. But anyway, let's run it and make sure we didn't break it, because I broke it. Random integer from... no, it's random range. It's from 0 to entities count. -1 because it's inclusive. Entity is equal to entities dot what did I use for that? It's like something at. Was the... We're calling to get an entity by ID is what I was doing for that. Element at. Value. And we return the entity. Okay, so we don't have this fully done yet. Now we need a targeter. Entity's target, we are going to add class, which is so this is going to be target entity, random entity. Partial, and it extends targeter. It needs a public target random entity, which extends base, and it needs a public random entity with a I catalogable copy space to copy if. There's going to be some extra footwork in this one. Hey there, billboard. Are you going to sit with me or not, Sky? Huh? Oof, come here. So if you'll notice, look at Ember on the bed there. Zoom in. So I just kind of expanded that pillow by removing one of the folds from that comforter there. And Ember's sitting position has drifted towards the center. This is the cat sits in box kind of behaviors. They sit in the center. She likes sitting on that one. That's her favorite to sit on. And she is now sitting more towards the center of it, even though it has expanded. Okay, currently there isn't anything for the copy constructor to do. So it's in update targets that we want to deal with here. Copy. Paste. Huh. It's moving along. It's moving along. We are adding some new power-ups and behaviors. We've got projectiles bouncing off of each other. We have behavior triggers that require that you hit something first, that the projectile impact something before the gate opens and new behavior begins. I don't know that that's in its end state yet, but we'll see. So when we're updating the target, we are only going to ask if entity is null. We are going to do a thing. We have and category as a get set. Oh wow, that was a bit ago, Billboard. As far as our pathfinding at the moment, we have settled back on the blobs just run straight at you. They don't care about collision with each other. I may yet add some of that in, but it's not terribly relevant. And it also creates a complication in their behavior in that now blobs have to be, enemies have to be able to collide with enemies. And that's not really what I'm looking for. Because then we have to have logic that says, hey, if you bumped into something like yourself, behave differently than if you bump into the player or a bullet. Is it eventually possible? Yes, but let's not get there just yet. Okay, so we're not going to JSON ignore that one. We need to keep it. This one's going to be our JSON constructor. So now we do have something target random entity. Copy as target random enemy category. It's equal to that category. And we've already copied the other stuff. When I say target cursor, the target direction gets updated to that direction. Okay. Public Boolean block. What does lock on do? Lock on is going to tell us whether we should keep updating the direction or not. So if our entity is null, we're going to get one. Okay, so now we have one. Or we should have one. Should have one. So this is... We're going to ask again. If it does not equal null, I technically don't have to JSON ignore this one, but we're going to be explicit about it. And not no targets. The entity is null. Targets is equal to entity is null. Okay, if we do not get an entity, it's null. Entity and target entity is equal to entity. We already have entity. Entity is null. Capital entity. Okay, if the entity isn't null, we are going to set this up this way. It's not null. Not null, we are going to set the direction accordingly. Let's see if we have move straight line. What I don't want is for it to just fail outright. Target direction will randomize the direction if there is no direction. So we're going to do something like this in a moment. The entity is not null if direction is not equal to 0. Numerics, we are using Godot. Okay, if it's 0 and there is an entity, then we are going to say that direction is equal to entity.position.direction2 entity.position. Else if okay, so we're saying the direction to the entity. If we have an entity and the direction is 0, we are going to get that. say here, or lock on. So if we haven't set it, or we are tracking them, we set it to the direction. Else if okay, so if entity is null, we're going to skip this part. Then we're going to say, okay, entity is null and the vector is 0. Then we are going to do the same thing with target direction. And we're going to say that. We are going to get a random one in the circle. So it's going to try to get an entity. Now, if I remove no targets, it's going to try every time if the entity is null. As soon as it gets an available target, it will stay locked onto that target. But for the time being, we're going to say it needs to acquire a target immediately. If it doesn't, then it's not going to get that lock. Right now, when we copy, we're keeping the same entity. Let's go up through into Targeter and make sure that's the case. Yes, they keep the same entity. So if you spread them, it's going to keep the same lock on. For the time being, though, when we make this targeter, we are going to we're not going to give it lock on. If it's lock on, they're all going to grab the same entity. We could add a flag that says do not copy the entity. So we could have a entity equals null here if it doesn't like the target. Okay. So if we don't get an entity, and we haven't already checked and there wasn't an entity, we'll try to get one. Then if we got one, if we managed to get one out of this, then we're going to update the target entity of the entity itself, just in case there is something down the road that looks at it and says, is there already a target? We could have it inherit the target entity. But currently we're not. Okay, let's just leave that as is. Okay, it will go in a steady random direction if it never gets an entity. And we're never going to try to update the entity. It has one shot to get one. So if we have this paired with move straight line, we should be good. It's okay. Quick build. here, and we're going to make the targeter. Target enemy. Welcome back. This is target random entity. And our values are going to... We need a category, and we need whether there is a lock-on. I will put 0. That's not accurate, but... Okay, to get the proper category... category is 4. No bosses in it yet. There will be. Bosses will be... Currently, there's going to be a periodic big thing that shows up for you to deal with. They'll be sort of like milestones. Okay, so we have target random entity now. Now we need to go into a behavior of movement. Let's move fixed random entity. Straight line, and then it is... It's odd. Targeter, random enemy. Okay, so now we have move fixed random. And now we need an item for it. I'm going to take straight line. It's our random. So we're going to take straight line. We're going to replace that. I haven't decided whether it will be endless by default or if there will always be a hard end state. For example, you have plenty, like Vampire Survivors by default ends at 30 minutes. There is a inescapable death condition that happens. I think it's 30 minutes. It might be a little after that. So by default, it's at 30 minutes. Red Reaper will hit you and you die. Through shenanigans, you can get the right item. If you get the right item combination, you can survive Red Reaper. There are achievements for doing it. If you do, eventually, you will hit a hard end condition. And that is the White Reaper will show up, and it is inescapable and will end you. That creates a hard end state. I think there's an endless mode where you wouldn't have those flags. You wouldn't have those two end states. I think by default, I'm going to have an end state. And the end state, I haven't decided in particular, but my current running theory is that the end state is going to be a nuclear bomb. That will make sense the further we go on. Because lore and whatnot. I mean, it could also be a gigantic orbital laser. Both of those are accurate end states for the lore. Okay, we're going to call this one... what did we call it? Is... We'll call it fixed random enemy. That's largely why the laser or the nuke tests. We'll get there. It is effectively why that. Okay, so target random enemy, and we're going to say it is fixed random enemy, and so it is movement fixed random entity. And we'll still use... Remember to change that. Got you in there, and we're going to make sure... Remember to change this. I mean, the sequential super death conditions could be interesting. It would give you that same vibe, is that there could be things that you could do that would protect you from some of the death states. Until eventually there would be the it is sure you are dead thing. Okay, so now we have an item for fixed random enemy. And now we need to add that to the loadout. Here. There. And now we try to run it. Check. And now I have random enemy. So we can see some opposed motion happening. Now, there will need to be some additional logic. There will need to be some additional logic that we get in here, but yeah. Okay, so this is unlocked targeting here. So hop back in. And now we are going to have a targeter that is Oof. This guy kicking off there. So we've got targeter, and we are going to say lock random enemy. What's the difference? If I set lock to true, it will redirect to get to that enemy. So now I need a movement for that. Yep. They're getting the homing logic in here. So we have fixed random enemy. So we are going to call this move 2. Homing logic, like homing missile. So it locks it finds a target and it keeps moving to get to them. But we're still moving in a straight line, and what move in a straight line says is that whatever this tells me the direction is, move in that direction. So that's a movement 2 random enemy. And now if we go into the items, we're just gonna make another one of the same thing. Fixed random enemy. Just going to call it lock random enemy. Same thing. Say it tracks random enemy. Here we have, instead of fixed random, we're going to lock. So the difference between lock and fixed is that fixed says what is the direction to the random enemy right now, and that direction does not change after that point. What lock will do is it will say, for this enemy, what are they? The orange cat, that's Mason. He is kind of a tan and orange color. Mason's coloration is relatively symmetrical, pretty symmetrical. It's generally underbelly and socks. His brother, Sherbet, same coloration, but very asymmetrical. He's got it's a lot splotchier. The target random enemy isn't done yet. There's another thing we need to add to it. And now we look at it, it's called track random enemy. Yeah, we're not really seeing it happen here. Not working properly. Okay, let's check our logic here. Lock on is false. Lock on should be true. Or if that's not how I need to indicate it. I wonder if I need to put 1 there. Oh. No, it's target random enemy. That's still right. It's lock random enemy. Then we have a behavior, which is movement to random entity. Let's verify that that's what we put in the item. Ah, that's why. We weren't using the right behavior in the item. All right, I am seeing movement changes. We're getting conflict because there is a random direction that is fighting it periodically. They should not be stopping, though. Oh, that's because entity doesn't become null. Okay, here's the thing that we're missing. So here's where we are getting the entity initially. Move entity services. Okay, where are we doing that? So the remove entity event, which would also be used in the collision manager. Base entity manager. Okay, we're looking for the entity's remove entity event. On remove entity. If the entity is supposed to go away, we null the entity. What this will also do is make it reacquire a target if its entity is gone. Yep, they are reacquiring target. Bonus fun, make them spin. Spread them out. Just one at a time. Or we have some that are instantly going away. But what that might be is that they're changing direction. If we do a spread of 3... Now the thing is, a spread of 3, they're all going to try to go at the same target when they appear. But as soon as the initial target is lost, they will fan out and get new targets. Isn't that neat? Now these will be way less accurate. Reason being is the target lock has nothing to do with the spiral right now. The spiral is trying to happen centered on the homing. But if I move it after, we're going to get a really different pattern here. So the projectile is being dragged towards the target. The center of the spiral is moving, and the spiral is going to try to drag it outward from that point. But the subsequent movement is then hauling that projectile towards a target enemy. So it's making the projectiles fan out and move very quickly. That's the floor. Billboard, that is demonstrating how the floor is constructed. So the red floor is the center of the world, essentially. The red floor is the defined floor. That is like... That floor will always look that way, and it will always be in the same position. The blue floor is infinitely repeated. And we can see that repetition right here. This is the corner of the red floor. The blue floor is copied up and left and up and left. The blue floor just keeps getting duplicated no matter how far we go. So if I keep going this way, it will always be blue floor. Blue floor is not actually what the map would look like. This is the testing map. And it will stay the testing map. Right, there will be a map to it. And that red map is going to be pretty big. Or at least the goal is it's pretty big. We may still segregate it into levels, but I'm tempted to make it so that part of it is going distant from the start point. We'll see how that plays out. I would probably make a different test map, but that's an interesting idea, Lunar. Oh yeah. The homing is doing cool stuff. Okay. Let's get a save state in here. That. All right, so if we go into our data again, the yarn ball should not have random direction. In fact, I want to avoid random direction as a base weapon behavior as often as possible, because random direction is awful for most of the games. Vampire Survivor's base fireball is really hard to rely on because by default it does not target an enemy. It just fires in a random direction. Now, eventually, if you get enough projectiles and it's upgraded enough, especially if it gets its max upgrade, it's great. But that's entirely because you overcome the random direction. If we're going to use random direction, the item needs to be awesome from the get-go. Like, super effective from the get-go. Entities, yarn ball. Oh, what did I call it? Behavior, movement. Movement, fixed random entity. And that's going to be in group yarn ball. We're using fixed groups here so that I avoid having to have in the entity, I avoid having to fully define these behaviors. Because there will be behavior groups that are going to be, the default enemy behavior. It has a random starting position, it hurts the player, that kind of thing. Okay, so the yarn ball will bounce, it will acquire the direction to an enemy, and it will go from in that way. Or it will go that way. Oh, okay. It has no entity. If there is an entity after that, this isn't a huge difference to my understanding. Technically, we're saving an operation here. This is, if we have an entity, then we update it. Otherwise, we say there were no targets, and we won't update the entity. This is amusing. So, if I didn't get if there were no targets at the time, then it will never reacquire a target. But if there was a target at the time, and there is a target the next time it looks, then it will be able to reacquire targets. No targets does not get set until it has no targets at the time that it looked first. So if ever this returns null, then this gets set and it never looks again. But if this keeps returning an entity, it will keep reacquiring target. I don't know that I dislike that. Now, this might be one that we need to say if there is already a target entity, then use that entity. Okay. Do that again. So the yarn ball does not update its direction. It fires at where the target was at the time it spawned. It will strike, it will bounce, it will acquire a new target. Yeah. So in this way, adding this is much less impactful. In fact, this isn't much different than move in a random direction as far as the spiral is concerned. And spiral in would still increase general coverage of the projectile, but it does not improve likelihood of striking a target. Now we can get a fun result by putting track random enemy here. So after all movement, home in on an enemy. Now we're going to get some weird motion because those two target random enemies can get different enemies. So one thing we could do to mitigate this is have the targeter look at the entity and say, do you already have a target entity, and does it match my category? If it does, I'm going to use that enemy, or that entity. So let's incorporate that. You know what? We don't need no targets. Okay, we get all the way, we get here and we say try to get entity is and not tried to get entity. So what this says is only try once. If there isn't an entity, you're done. This is, we will not reacquire. We will lock, and if we stop, if we fail to get a lock, we won't move on. If there is already a target entity, we use that. We update it. This is a redundancy if this already happened, but we are reaffirming what the entity is. So now we're going to put the track random entity on. So now it's moving extra fast but it's stopping. It should not stop. They should not stop. Ah, okay. It's this here. Now we don't want to keep adding this. The problem is, if we don't add this event, then we won't be able to properly unbind it, and that's why we're getting that stop there, is that it's getting the entity is dead and it does not have a position, kind of thing. We need to be able to get the null state again. Okay, we're going to move this inside. He is still null. So, if we don't have an entity yet, we tried to get one. We are going to have tried to get one. Let's just for line of thinking coherency. First, we check the entity. Does it already have a target? If it already has a target, we're going to use that, and we're going to skip this step. And then we will add the event, and we're going to say we tried to get one. If the entity didn't already have a target, we are going to say, oh, try to get one from the entity manager. If we got one, we add the event. We said that we tried. If we still never got one, we do not add the event. We tried. So if we get here and we have an entity, we are going to enforce that on the entity that is trying to move. And then we are going to say, okay, if I don't have a direction already, or I'm trying to stay locked on, I'm going to set the direction to the direction to my target. Otherwise, the entity is null, and so the entity is null, and we haven't set a direction yet. We randomize the direction. We just fire in a random direction. Okay, so now we are going to add our track here. Like some of those are reacquiring targets. And that's because the entity's target entity is not being removed. I don't know that we can rely on the entity itself to keep its target. Okay. No matter what, this is how it plays out. We will always enforce this. What this means is that if the entity gets removed, we're going to tell the entity, you don't have a target entity anymore. Once again, this should not be happening. We should not be getting slow ones. The slow ones... Why are we getting that? This is a normalized direction. This is a normalized direction. The first one that comes in should set this. We immediately come in here and say, do we have an entity? We don't. Next time we come in, we still don't. Okay, now a slime has spawned. About 5 seconds have passed. A slime has spawned. Set the entity's target entity to the one that we got. This if should only happen if the else triggers. And no matter what, tried to get entity is going to be true if we get past this point. So why are we getting slow ones? Because we are getting opposed directions. We are still getting opposed directions because if we are not locking target, like if we are locking target, we're going to keep updating this direction. If we're not, then whatever the direction was, it stays that. So as the target moves, the two directions are going to get further and further off of each other, potentially resulting in a conflict between them that slows the projectile down. Like, these should have a pretty consistent speed because their direction never changes. Once it's set, it stays set. But as soon as we add the other homing in, Now the direction can shift. We're also not accounting for rotated here. Okay, so targeter. By default, rotate takes the direction and rotates it. But if the direction is being updated constantly, then the rotate isn't going to come in play yet. Like this will happen once during the rotation. But it will subsequently be changed almost immediately by tracking, if that's the case. I don't think that's a bad thing. Because we are getting the right behavior there. Yeah, and the homing tracking can interfere with the bounce motion. I think it's still weird that we're getting slow. My only guess is at the time of impact, the change in direction kind of skews it. Like each one of the rotations, like it results in a conflicting motion. Okay, that's still ultimately fine. If we put wave motion on here. Having some form of compelled motion like spiral will mitigate the risk of them just drifting, because the spiral does apply a velocity. It does apply a moving vector. I could have a reacquire flag, Lunar, such that if an enemy survives the hit, that it is willing to reacquire. That way, like, if a bounce happens, it grabs onto another. Essentially, we'll try again. And yeah, the weapons continue when the player is gone, because there isn't actually a failure state to the game. There's nothing that says are the players gone? If the players are gone, stop spawning weapons. There's nothing in the weapon spawning logic in the player inventory that says stop using the weapon if the player is gone, you know? which isn't bad for testing. I don't want to keep like, oh man, he got killed, the weapon test ends. All right, let's add that. Let's add a reacquire flag here. Spell reacquire in it. Spelling check. Yes. Yes. Get set. So if it's null and we've already tried, and we haven't tried yet, or reacquire. Let's check reacquire first. Again, this is a very simple check that we're making. That optimization is practically nothing. But when you have an or, it checks them from left to right in most languages, or at least in your C-style languages. It checks the or condition from left to right. As soon as a true happens in an or condition, it does not continue checking. Like, it doesn't need to. Whereas with an end condition, it will check all of them until a false happens. As soon as a false happens, the end doesn't need to check anymore. Because it knows the whole end now fails. Because one of them is false. Getting into exclusives and similar gets wonky, but, you know. Okay, if we set it to reacquire, then we're going to get some different behavior here. We are going to have... We're going to set both of them to reacquire just for testing purposes. We have lock random, which has lock on set, and then we have fixed random. Target random enemy, which is a fixed. They're both set to find a new target if they don't have one. And the current one is gone. We should not be getting stop in place. Yeah, stop in place implies conflicting motion. And we should never be able to get conflicting motion. Because currently, this one should be obeying whatever the fixed, the non-locking one is. So the locking one will say whatever the prior entity was. So the entity is null, and we reacquire. This is true. Let's just let that go so we can verify. Reacquire is false. How is reacquire false? It's not JSON ignore. It is a property. Require. Because we're not duplicating it. That's why. It wasn't in the copy constructor, so the one from the catalog isn't being obeyed. Still getting stalled movement. Require is true. Entity is null. We have a target entity here. Oh, here, let's fix this a bit. We will enforce what we have, because what we have might be null here. We force it here and update target. Immediately force it. So it becomes null over the course of this. Then if we get all the way down here, we say this, and we say entity dot target direction is equal to direction. Okay, we've updated the whole batch now. Oh, we're still getting stalls. Should not be possible to get a stall. Move it here. Get all the way to this. This is when we're going to force it. The first one says this is what it is. First one then goes on. All right, let's... We need to get to here. Okay. No, it's null. We need to get to here. Okay, we have our first entity to exist. All of them should proceed to get to here. No matter what, we should get a whole bunch of these in a row. because they should all reacquire immediately. As soon as 6 seconds have passed, they should all change direction. They don't. Reacquire is not happening for this one. But why? Why is this not firing? Okay, this can be different, though. We know reacquire is true in both of these, but this isn't quite right. Like, reacquire... Now, reacquire is true, or this is true. If this is false and reacquire is false... No, it's... If this is true... If tried to get is false, then it's true. This whole thing passes. If reacquire is true, then this whole thing passes. So, true. So, entity is null and true. Because this is true. Every time this is true. Let's verify. It should be true. Yeah. So we should always be able to get here. We can add a debug to this. Oh, okay. Right here is where we update the direction. If we acquire a new entity, we should zero that out. Okay. Because we aren't reacquiring a new direction. We want to leave it, but if we get to a new entity, we want to purge our direction. If I get to the end of this, this is 0. Because that will change the reacquire logic here. That should not have been happening. Okay, we were constantly firing because reacquire is true, which was constantly zeroing that, which was constantly firing the random direction. Okay, we can fix this by doing a bit of this. Not reacquire. Feels kind of hacky. I don't necessarily like that, but Nope, that didn't fix it. Why didn't that fix it? Oh. If we acquire no, that's still not quite right. Still not right. Quick break. I wanna get this hammered out. Settled in, just a moment. And I thought of how to fix that. Only if we got a new entity do we zero the direction. Okay, these all fly out. They have no idea, but the minute there are entities, they're like, oh, there's targets. Get them. They bounce, they reacquire a target. You can see some of them lose their target because something else got it. And because they're set to reacquire, they will redirect immediately. So I think the fixed one should not reacquire. The ones with homing, I kind of like the idea that they would reacquire. All right, it's not stacking properly. Direction is ever zeroed, randomize it. Direction. It has a direction. I'll already use that direction. If it's still 0, then we update it to random here. Still getting slow ones during this. We shouldn't be able to get slow ones. They should immediately reacquire a target and fly right at it. Like, I can get if their target survives, that they have trouble, because the fixed direction one can pull directly against it if they shoot right by it and just miss. Like, we can see that. The ones that miss have trouble reacquiring properly. And I think that's actually why we're getting slow ones, is they reacquire and they lose their target. Now, if their target is behind the direction of the random direction, they might have problems locking back on. Still doesn't seem right. They should be able to reacquire immediately. Just make sure that when the entity is removed... No, we don't want to remove the direction here. We reassert it at the top. They're having trouble getting something here. I mean, there's way more bullets than blobs. That might be part of the problem. Yeah, there should never be that kind of slowdown. We're getting a conflict between them. It's... Oh, no, okay, this is leading to a problem here. All right, we got layered problems. can't do that, because if the entity already has something and ours is not propagated yet, so we lost our entity in the last frame, in the last collision frame, or the last processing frame, we lost our entity. But a prior behavior reasserts it at the beginning of the next update. We don't want to take our null and stamp it over top. We want to inherit that one. Very fiddly, very fiddly. Immediately reacquire. Should never get slow ones. Okay. We're going to put that on there. Okay, we have a bunch that are moving to 0 because they aren't getting new entities. That's because the target entity's entity is not getting nulled. Still want to be able to preserve the prior ones. Yeah, the problem is, when we come up into here, we want to be able to respect the initial target entity, and we want it to be able to wrap back around. But if that entity has been removed, then we have a problem. Because we need to be able to trust that the entity that we have is accurate. We're allowing the target entity to wrap back around so that it remains consistent, but I don't know that that's actually true. Because we should have our own direction, one way or the other. If the targeter has a direction, it should assert it going forward. So at the beginning of the entity's processing pass, when it is going through and saying run the behaviors, in our handle message here, which should be time passed in this particular case, the entity should be zeroing it out. Proposed movement, target direction is equal to vector 2, 0. Target entity is equal to null. I have nothing. It will only take what is asserted going forward. We're getting slow ones. We don't even necessarily want time passed to be the case. We're going to remove this. And in our... because this is the first targeter that reacts to an event. Entity.target entity is null. If we lose our entity, we are going to tell the target entity, you lost your entity too. Okay, we have a couple of stops. We still have stoppers. But that should be doubly not right, because we get to the end of the loop. And if the targeters have lost their target, then I don't think this is right. To 0. We lose our entity, we purge everything. The fact that we're getting some of them that stall out is... yeah, we're getting stall outs. They're going to whatever the prior position was and just stopping. Which means they're not respecting that the entity has gone away. They're going to wherever it was and they're staying there. And we don't want it to lose direction anyway, because we want it to be able to keep flying in the direction it was going. So we've purged it out. Entity is null, and we're going to try to reacquire. We've already tried. This is needless. What we're doing here is we're just putting a little debug step in to see as soon as we reacquire what the state is. Okay. We are reacquiring. This is the... Yep, no, we've got the right thing. This shouldn't matter. That should not matter. This is like the target entity of the thing that's being removed is not what we're thinking of. We want the entity that is us here. That's why. That's why. This is the wrong thing we're clearing. We want the bullet. Like, this is the bullet. Not really correct. We start this off. Entity is null. We set it. Like, I did not tell you to do that. That. This is... local entity. This is a failsafe check. This shouldn't actually be relevant. Just in case. All right. Still getting slowdowns. Still getting slowdowns. All right, this isn't quite right. We are going to make an interim save. We'll have to fix this a little bit later. But we still made some progress. We have target locking going on. We just need to figure out what is breaking down during the reacquire process, because we are getting either conflicting motion or something else in there where we aren't properly updating where we're supposed to be going. Which is strange, but it is what it is. We'll have to see. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you had a good time. We're still trying to get more streams rolling. We'll see if I can get some more over the weekend properly. That is the goal. I want to keep the streams relatively short. We don't want to burn out on this. The game project is fun. Don't want it to become a burden. But that means I want to get more stream time in otherwise. So I'm still looking at getting some gaming streams sprinkled in. I also want to try to get some shorts in for the coding. That's having something to showcase, and we are getting into creation, so I want to start throwing stuff in there once it is functional. Like, hey, look at this kind of stuff. We'll see, though. We'll see. All that said, folks, I hope you have a good rest of your day. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, I'm getting all of this out of order. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Let me know what you're thinking of the streams in the comments. It'll help the channel improve, and it helps us grow in general. All right, once again, hope the rest of your day is good, and I'll see you next time.